Firearms friends, let's get right down to it. We're going to take a look at some military arms in our upcoming June 21st through 23rd Sporting Collector Firearms Auction. As always, there's a preview day the day before the event, June 20th, open to the public. You can put your hands on all these, so come out to our New Bedford, Texas facility and check them out for yourself. But as you maybe can tell, we're not going to look at some of the more popular military arms. Our auctions always have, M1 carbines, Garands, Colts, Krags, Mausers, Lugers, you name it. Those are mainstays. They're always going to be there. But when you search the auction, whether you're on the website, whether you come to the facility on preview day, and check these things out for yourself, when you go through the racks, there's some really interesting items in the sale, and that's what I wanted to show you 4 of today. Let's start by throwing chronology to the wind. I want to start with this little Ruger Mark II up front. Now, we don't always think, of course, of a Ruger Mark series or Ruger Standard pistol as military guns, but they go back far enough where the Mark I was used for marksmanship practice, being ordered by the U.S. government. In 1983, the government actually put out word that they were looking for a .22 target pistol for bullseye competitions. A lot of people submitted. Of course, the Ruger Mark II ends up being selected. They placed an order for several thousand that next year. Slightly lesser known is that in 1987, the Navy also placed an order for 500 of the Mark II pistols for use by the Navy SEALs. They ordered them blacked out. They're stainless steel, blacked out. So you notice our medallions are black, not just the background, the whole medallion is black. We have a blued bolt. Even the mag base is blacked out. And they ordered the front sight base to be 1/4 inch wide for attaching certain things. The use on them is pretty hush-hush, but we know the order was placed. We also know that there were 84 that were sort of overproduction. They were then given a couple years later to the Ruger Collector Association to be sold, and this is one of the 84. Ruger Mark II, I believe it's called the KMK 512B Mark II Target for those serious Ruger collectors. Fantastically rare. Comes with a factory letter from Ruger, comes with its certificate from the Ruger Collector Association. Just, boy, talk about modern military guns. Here's a great way to pick one up. And you don't hear about a lot of guns coming out of the SEALs or even especially modern military weapons coming out of the military at all. So if you're a Navy SEAL collector, if you like any sort of special forces guns, if you collect modern things, if you collect Rugers, there's a great opportunity for a fantastic little Ruger and a classic Plinker otherwise. But what a neat piece of military history you can pick up at a pretty darn good value. Now, things are going to get a little unusual. Had to show you one. I've only seen one come through the auction house before. German World War II Deckungszielgerät, or the DZG. Let's stick with that. Or we just call it a German sort of trench periscope rifle. Of course, normally we associate these things with World War I, right? And the Americans did it. A lot of places did it. Americans, we've sold several of the Kamranyagi. They're used for bolt actions. And because they're used for bolt actions and shooting out of the safety of the trench, there's a necessarily complex sort of linkage that you have to do to cycle the bolt while remaining in the safety of the trench. Of course, in World War II, we have semi-automatics come along. And all that complex linkage is not necessary. All these folding and bending parts, way of the past. The Deckungszielgerät, we have a little periscope here, which has a flat sort of flange, I don't know what you want to call it up here, with holes in it so you can place your camouflage in there and really blend in. What it's really meant to do, of course, these clamps release. You can slide the butt of your rifle in there. Now this is for G41, both types, G43, or even captured Russian SVT-40s or some of the Tokarev rifles. You can put those in there. You're looking through your periscope here. Once you attach your chain, this would of course run up through the machine, attaches to your trigger guard. You have a trigger mechanism down here, and that's basically how it would look. You would shoulder here, look through the gun's normal sights while remaining safely in cover. Like I said, I've only seen one come through the auction house before in almost a decade. So rare piece, really good chance to get your hands on this really mostly intact version of a piece of World War II history that has its roots going all the way back to World War I. And I'm gonna set this down so we can get a better look at some of the other guns we're gonna show you. Like this little beauty up here from the John Maxwell collection. You know that last month we had an auction, dedicated Smith & Wesson auction from the John Maxwell collection. This comes from Mr. Maxwell's collection, so it should be no surprise it would have a rare item like the M13 Air Crewman. Fantastic little Smith & Wesson revolver. Beginning of the Korean War, the Air Force wanted a lighter weight weapon to carry for air crews. Put out the word. Colt and Smith & Wesson, of course, were sort of the final entrants for that. Smith & Wesson got the contract. The result, as indicated up here, revolver, lightweight M13, known today as the Air Crewman. Little K-frame, 38 special. Where's it here? Property of U.S. Air Force. Here on the back strap, incredibly lightweight pistol, thanks to that weight requirement from the Air Force. And it's lightweight because we're dealing with aluminum parts, which was good and bad. It was definitely a step forward in using aluminum for gun parts and the like. It was a step back because they needed special ammunition for those aluminum parts. Just like metallurgy and Colt Walkers wasn't what it was for, as for later revolvers and black powder and smokeless. Aluminum at this point in the 50s wasn't what it should have been. So if you weren't using, I believe it was M41 special ball, 38 special ammo, if you were just using off the shelf 38 special ammo, you're going to deal with a lot of cracks, even ruptured cylinders. Now, it only took the US military a shade under a decade to realize the error of their ways. It's pretty good. These were recalled, many were destroyed, very, very few surviving today. This one's been wonderfully refinished. Again, out of Mr. Maxwell's collection, we wouldn't expect anything but this level of work. Fantastic gun, rare guns, and a great chance to add a rare one to your collection, because there's also the J-frame Baby Air Crewman, extremely rare, and you're talking like 10 times the cost. So if you're into rare Smith & Wessons, and you don't want to dump out the pocketbook just yet for the Baby Air Crewman, the regular Air Crewman looks fantastic, very rare, and a great Smith & Wesson, great U.S. military piece. There's all sorts of reasons to collect this, and to have it in a sporting and collector auction, fantastic opportunity. Last but not least, one of the big ones on the table, and it's a mouthful. This is a Springfield Sharps model 1870 Type 2 Trials rifle. Whew, got through it. As you can imagine, after the Civil War, the U.S. has a fair amount of surplus. Sharps carbines were no exception. And being the frugal government that we have, they're trying to figure out ways to reuse these. You've already spent the money, they're already in surplus. How do we keep these relevant? Well, you convert them from percussion to cartridge, and maybe we got to reline the barrels. We can do some things to keep these in inventory a little longer. Sharps was performing the work, but it was revealed that Springfield could be doing the work cheaper. They'd rebarrel them and convert them and all sorts of things for the carbine. So the work was all given to Springfield. Significant cost savings for the U.S. government, not only for the guns in general, but to have the work done. Most of those are carbines. If you see the rifles that have been redone by Springfield, they're rare. You should pick those up right away. As Springfield is doing this work, interesting times for the United States. In the late 1860s and into 1870s, we'll find out, internationally, the U.S. finds itself ill-prepared for war, because there is a lot of conflict at Europe at that point, and the arms that they're using are far more advanced than the muskets, like the Springfield 61 musket that's been used, just 5 years earlier in 1865. So, there's chassepôts and there's needle fires, and the U.S. is kind of like, they're kind of panicking a little bit. Like, what do we do? How do we upscale our inventory of our arsenal? And so, what's the best way to do it? Well, the trials of 1870. Now, they already know they're moving to cartridge fire. They've got that decided. They're 50-70, so 50 grain bullet under 70 grains of powder. But what's going to be, they're literally throwing this out to anybody. Anybody can throw their hat in the ring, and anybody does. You have the Allen Conversion Springfields, what we later know as the Trapdoor, Sharps, the Remington Rolling Block, Peabody, Martini, any number of manufacturers are all, of course, rightfully seeking this government contract. Well, Springfield's already doing the work for Sharps, and so as Springfield is doing this work on all these Sharps, the U.S. government says, hey, we're going to need those for some of these 1870 rifle trials. And so they provide 1,000 of the cartridge converted rifled muskets. They only want full-length rifles for the trials, and they want 300 of the new production 1870 Sharps that were made, originally to be a breech loading, cartridge firing rifled musket. And of those 300, and the Type 1 are of course known as the conversions are the Type 1, and the ones that were produced to be cartridge firing are the Type 2. Of those 300, this is one. Very long way to tell you about what a cool and significant American firearm this is. Straight breech Sharps, of course, by that point in production, you've left the slant breeches far behind. One of 300 at 1870 U.S. rifle trials. When the U.S. is trying to figure out what the next step is, how is it going to compete with these grand European armies, when America at this point is a country that still doesn't believe in having a standing army. What are we going to do? How many are we going to produce? How can we up production in time? So much going on from a U.S. military standpoint, and here it is right at the heart of it all. One created for the trials that's competing against the Remington, that's competing against, even Colt had a couple submissions, and obviously we don't think of Colt as a long rifle maker, but he wasn't about to miss a trick when it came to U.S. military contract. 4 fantastic military guns. Ones you don't always think of. You can find guns like this, like we said in the last auction about some of those big 4. You can find interesting guns like this throughout the June 21st through 23rd Sporting Collector Firearms Auction. You just got to do a little digging. Like I said, if you don't come to preview day to look through the racks yourself and put your hands on these, please check us out at rockislandauction.com. Place some bids. Maybe come see us in Bedford. Until next time, keep your powder dry.